All right, I want you to picture this for a second. It's 1895 in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin. Supper is just about ready, but an aging farmer with these gnarled, deeply weathered hands pulls his American-born grandchildren close to him. He knows his time is running short, and he wants to impart something absolutely vital before he's gone. He needs to explain to them exactly how they got there. So today, in this explainer, we're going to walk through the incredible life memoir of Eriksen Natvig. We're going to dive into the raw source material to really understand the sheer grit and the unbelievable sacrifices it actually took to build a life in 19th century America.
So the source document kicks off with this incredibly beautiful direct address. Come here, children. Let me tell you of a different world, across the ocean where I was born 75 years ago. I mean, as you read his memoir, you can almost hear the crackle of the fireplace, right? You can feel the weight of his years. He's speaking to kids who only know him as an old Wisconsin farmer, but he is about to transport them and us to a place of towering mountains and deep waters.
That different world was his birthplace. Section 1. Growing up in Norway, the fjords of Sogndal. To give you a quick map of where we're headed, here is the massive sweep of Elling's life, born in 1820 in Eskilstrand. Just 2 years later, tragedy strikes when his father dies. He marries in 1845 and then hits the massive pivot point of his life, emigrating to America in 1862. You're going to want to keep this timeline in the back of your head because it really anchors everything we're about to discuss regarding his endurance. Okay, so his family's farm literally clung to a hillside right above a dark blue fjord in Sogndal. And sure, it was scenic, but it was deeply unforgiving. The growing seasons in Norway were brutally short. Snow came early and it stayed late. And remember that tragedy on our timeline? His father, Erik, died when Elling was just 2 years old. His mother, Christy, was suddenly a widow raising 6 kids all by herself. Growing up fatherless in that kind of harsh environment meant Elling didn't really get much of a childhood. By age 6 or 7, he was already carrying water and tending animals. In the summer, the whole family worked from dawn until dark just to survive.
Moving into Section 2, the search for land and a growing family at Overton. Fast forwarding to his adulthood, Elling marries a woman named Anna.
Now, what's fascinating here is that Anna was a widow. She was 8 years older than Elling, and she already had children from her first marriage. But Elling notes that age mattered far less than character and a willingness to work hard. They built a life together at a farm called Overton and end up having to feed 6 children. 4 of their own, plus Anna's 2 daughters. Elling actually describes coming in from the fields to this house just full of voices and the smell of baking bread. They were really good, happy years. But as those 6 kids grew, a heavy, sinking realization started to set in. Which brings us to a massive question. Why leave the home of your ancestors? Why pack up absolutely everything and abandon the only mountains, the only fjords, the only community your family has known for generations?
Well, it all boiled down to one thing: land. See, in Norway, the best farms were locked up. They were kept within the exact same families for generations. Their farm at Overton was small, and Elling looked at his sons and realized this heartbreaking truth. There was no land for them to inherit. There was simply no future for them in Sogndal. But at the exact same time, these rumors were spreading through the fjords like wildfire, stories of America, tales of land so rich and plentiful that any man willing to work hard could own his own farm. The push of poverty and the pull of opportunity completely collided. I really want you to absorb these numbers for a second. 41 and 50. When they finally made the agonizing decision to leave, Elling was 41, Anna was 50, and let's be real, in 1862, 50 was definitely not the new 30. It took unimaginable grit to agree to completely start over in a strange, distant land at that age.
But they made the call. Part 3, crossing the ocean on the 1862 voyage. They sold everything they could, packed whatever was left, and got ready to cross the Atlantic. 8 family members, Elling, Anna, and all 6 kids. They packed their entire physical existence into just a few trunks they could carry onto a ship. They were leaving the mountains of their ancestors and stepping totally into the unknown. And the reality of that crossing? It was terrifying. They traveled in steerage, which was the lowest, cheapest part of the ship. It was incredibly claustrophobic and dark. Hundreds of emigrants were packed together in these bunks stacked 3 high. The air was just thick with the smell of sickness, and Anna herself was violently ill for days. Elling vividly remembers standing up on the deck, watching waves as tall as mountains crashing toward them, genuinely wondering if his family would even survive, or if he had just led them all to their deaths. But then,
Finally, salvation. He writes, after so long seeing nothing but water in every direction, to see land rising from the sea, we had made it. We were in America. You can just feel the profound, overwhelming relief pouring out of the source text. Seeing that coastline after weeks of terror and sickness was everything. They survived the ocean, but honestly, the real work was just getting started. Part 4, starting over in Wisconsin, the New World. They settled in Dane County, initially living in this small, rough-built cabin, starting from absolute zero. The landscape shock must have been wild. They traded the rocky, vertical terrain of Norway for the flat, fertile soils of Wisconsin. Swapping one famously brutal winter for another, sure, but they gained land that was so much easier to plow. Before long, they were raising abundant crops of wheat, corn, and oats. But make no mistake here, even with the better land, Elling actually calls these first years the hardest of his entire life. They had burned their bridges. There was zero safety net, no going back. He was a 41-year-old guy struggling with strange language, strange customs, and he even mentions the birds and trees were strange to him. He admits he often wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. But day by day, working alongside his sons Sylvester and Eric, they slowly, painfully built a highly successful, thriving farm. And all of that incredible hard work culminated in a deeply emotional moment in 1880. Elling traveled to Madison, Wisconsin, and officially renounced his allegiance to the King of Norway and Sweden. He became a citizen of the United States. He notes in the memoir that a little part of him felt like a traitor to his homeland, but the bigger part knew the absolute truth. His future and his family's future was firmly rooted in American soil. Which brings us right back to where we started this whole story. 1895. Part 5, A Grandfather's Legacy, Passing the Torch. Elling is 74 years old now, looking down at his hands, reflecting on a lifetime of incredible transition. He's getting his final affairs in order. He arranges for the farm to pass to his son Sylvester, who'd worked it right alongside him for over 30 years. He makes sure his brave wife Anna is fully provided for, and the memoir captures this deeply human mix of emotions here. He expresses heavy grief over the recent tragic loss of his niece Ragnhilda, but at the same time, he is beaming with pride as he looks at his grandchildren. Grandkids who speak perfect English, grandkids who are, undeniably, Americans. And he leaves them with this incredibly powerful directive. Remember that you come from people who were brave enough to cross an ocean for a better life. He's basically begging them never to forget their Norwegian roots. He wants them to understand that their current comfort was bought and paid for by the sheer endurance of their ancestors. And then he hits the true climax of his memoir. We left everything behind and started over so that you could have this life, this land, this future. That one sentence, it beautifully justifies every single hardship, every terrifying wave on the Atlantic, and every exhausting day in the fields that he and Anna endured. It was never about them. It was always about the future. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with that exact same weight Elling left his grandchildren. We all have to ask ourselves, what are you building for the generations that will come after you? Eriksen Natvig built a foundation out of literally nothing but grit and sacrifice. His story challenges us to look at our own lives and ask what kind of legacy we're leaving behind. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I really hope Elling's story stays with you as long as it stayed with me.